courage as a nurse to do what she did. Brought that message. She said she called me a lot, but we both grew in that. We all grew. It was a blessing. Anytime somebody asks you to help, I mean, that it comes back to you as a blessing, and you're stronger in your convictions. So, and I'm so happy for that father that he's got his family with him, because inside he knows, and we know he knows, because he's a total person. He's not just, somebody who doesn't. It has his worth based on function. That's not what it's all about. And I am very glad that we have an opportunity today, too, to hear from a family member, Father Randy Richardson, who we've all learned over the last years to come to know him better, know him as a dad, and his unconditional love for his family, for his daughter Lauren. And he's going to bring us an update on how things are going. And Pat brought to mind how we all stood and prayed outside the Meadowood, out there at Meadowood, the nursing home. She said, "Oh, I remember him from that." And how's Lauren? And I still pray for him every night. So it's a beautiful testimony that he can bring to us. But again, to remind us of how we have to learn to question and be the advocate. And we don't know when we're going to be called to do that. So it's my pleasure. We've stayed in touch, and we've grown as families to love each other and stay close as families, and our bigger pro-life family too. So, Randy, come up and tell them all about Lauren. You all keep asking me about Lauren, so now you get to hear from her dad.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for taking the time and staying. Hopefully we can gain something out of what we're about to talk about, as you had the ones earlier. When I came here today, I wasn't sure exactly. I go to many different conventions or functions, and I'm led into areas to talk about our situation. My daughter's situation stems from family morals, the young people, from drug abuse to our hospital stay, from the emergency room to the ICUs, to giving birth to an unborn, to being in a home, to fighting a court case for 2 years to bring her home. So when you say, when you go to correct your kids or something, that the authorities could come, we are still under watch like that. If something was to happen to my daughter, after all these years of fighting and the financing to get her home, if something were to happen, they would take her and ask us the dumb questions. Again, you were basically guilty until proven innocent at that point. And I know there's been abuse and child abuse that kind of regulates how they do that. But today it looks like we've been talking about life from the womb to the tomb. From the beginning, dealing with abortion, to the end of life, dealing with the release of care issues. We fit this. I agree with everybody that's come up with society has an approach where the format of the moral foundation has eroded. I see this in the family, I see this in society. This both carries over to a political aspect, to a religious aspect. Politically, how we establish these institutions, the hospitals, the court cases, the foundations, the Rockefeller foundations that's leading certain things. Do you know that in the beginnings, part of my problem stems from some of these foundations when they were the Hemlock Society? This was a society that's now called Compassion and Care. Okay? And this eliminates a person's ability to life, because that is what originally established what is their quality of life. Led to the quantity, how long, what kind of treatment are they going to receive. And in today's world, as I look into things with some of the new healthcare programs coming up, and I'm not trying to get political, but these new healthcare programs will put those people in jeopardy that need the care the most, to where there will be a decision made. And I'm not saying death panels, but there will be a decision made on the quality of life versus the amount of care needed. And a lot of this comes up financially. You can go right down the road to producing the food they want. It's a financial gain. Some of the drugs that are used in ultra tests, it's a financial gain. Planned Parenthood, it's still a financial gain. As much as it was to deter the population, that is a big cash cow for certain types of doctors and institutions, that Planned Parenthood itself. So money plays a big part in everything that our society does, and they feel that they can make the decisions better than you can. And where it really crosses the line is when they get into a loved one or someone close. So with that being said, I'll get into Lauren's story. Lauren Richardson is my daughter. I was lucky enough in June the 4th of 1984 to have this wonderful little girl come into my life. And that changed my life more than anyone will ever know. I was not terrible bad or anything like that. I was hard work. I was a workaholic. I didn't really have a life. But now I had this little girl. And it changed things with me. She grew up very quiet person, very studious, A student, graduated with honors, had scholarships for college. We were doing very well. She was quiet. Now, she did have friends she had met, and not that I liked the haircut of each one, or just this or that, the other thing, or they played in a little bit of a band that I didn't agree with the music. I'm not so much on heavy metal. I don't understand it. And didn't even, I maybe could try more, but I just couldn't get to that level. But there was issues with drugs and boyfriends and all. Well, Lauren, the story starts when Lauren gave a call to me on a Tuesday afternoon. I finally got a hold of Lauren. I knew she was having problems. She had found out she was pregnant. She had been, her and her boyfriend really hadn't been that close because she hadn't been around the drug scene. She had been drug-free for 10 months. Kind of was establishing her life in a different area. And here she was in a spot where when I talked to her, I said, well, when can you come by? Let's sit down and talk. Trying to do exactly what I felt was called by me as a parent to do. And she said, well, Dad, I just don't have enough time, but how about Saturday? I'll come over Saturday. I said, you come over Saturday, we'll do a barbecue, by the pool, no problem at all. And this was in August of '06. And so Friday night I come home, I want to make sure the pool was just right and all, the heater wasn't working. So I called a buddy of mine up Friday afternoon and said, can you come over? So we were looking at the heater, I had a whole bunch of tools and all out by the pool, and at 3:30 I got a call. It was Christiana Emergency Center. And they basically told me, are you Randy Richardson, the father of Lauren Richardson? I said, yes, I am. Well, there's been an accident, and she, at this point in time, has a brain injury. There's no function. Can you come to the hospital? Well, I went inside, left my toolbox and all there, told my buddy, I said, look, there's been an accident, Lauren's in the hospital. I have to go. I went in and told my wife, I said, got to go up to the emergency room. And I got there about just a little after 4. Lauren had been there about an hour. And from this point on, I'm going to tell you the whole story as I now know it. Because at the time I entered the emergency room, I knew nothing. You have to understand, I did not know as much as you do about doctors, hospitals, and nurses. We had been healthy, accident-free, you know, no family crisis in our life at that point. So we get in the emergency room. I see my daughter. She's convulsing at this point. And in that hour, there was a doctor come in. And here comes a doctor with the white coat stethoscope. This was my Calvary. Thank you, God. Can you help my daughter? That's all you want. And you say your prayers underneath. You could be religious or not religious. Have faith, not have faith. It's like, oh, help me, Lord. You know, this is it. So he came in. He was asking us some things, had her chart. And he said, would you have her identification, driver's license, anything like that? And my wife said, yeah, here's her purse, my ex-wife. And she said, yeah, here it is. So he took her driver's license, clipped it on the board, and left. Well, what had happened, now that we know what went on, he never came back. I had another doctor come in and out periodically. And we stayed in that emergency room cubicle for 12.5 hours. And I found out, her being pregnant, we made a choice that we were waiting. We were told we were waiting on an ICU bed. Well, there was 3 ICU beds there. But they knew at this point in time my daughter's condition, their prognosis was she would die. And I'm trying to say that as direct as I can so everybody here can kind of get the gist of things. Now we're in our moment of crisis. The family has hit the brick wall at 100 miles an hour. And I knew it was out of my control. It's in God's hands. It's in the hands of the doctor and the hospital. What we didn't know is he took her license, which had organ donor on it. And they had proceeded to set up in the OR facilities in order to remove organs. And if you study that enough, or you look into it, you'll find out that a candidate is of prime age of 22. She just turned 22 4 weeks prior to this. She, good heart and all that stuff. And you'll find out that the best way to harvest some of these organs, and not being too direct with it, is a living person is put under sedation. That's the way they want to do the organs things, and I didn't know. Anyway, that's why we were there. Finally, she made it through all this. We go to an ICU room. Now, in the ICU, they kind of take a brain injury and they divide it up. They divide it up in 72 hours, 5 days, 2 weeks, a month, 60 days, 6 months, like that. And try to see where everything is leading to. Well, way before the 72 hours, we started getting claims of the doctors, and I mean every doctor and half the nurses, not all the nurses, will come up with the approach, well, this is your daughter, the daughter you once knew is no longer with us. And it's so sad, you know, and it's a shame to keep her this way, and that'll drive you out of your mind. And at the same point, I had doctors standing right there with me. I was there. They allowed me to be there around the clock. And I was there for 2 weeks around the clock. And then they made me leave for 6 hours a night. But for a year, we stayed in the hospital. For 2 years, my daughter only stayed alone one night at a court order. One night. My family, my mother, my wife, ex-wife, everybody took turns trying to work into this. So we got there, and these doctors were saying, Mr. Richardson, I don't know if she's going to make it tonight. They got this issue, that. Every single point that came up as far as issues in her health led to one street, that she wouldn't make it. And at the same time, I got another set of doctors saying, well, the daughter you once knew is not here. This is a shame. She's in pain, all this. So then I had to go to get some second opinions. Is she in pain? No, she's not in pain. Well, kind of what are we waiting for? Now, you start at this point to do research. What am I dealing with? What is the 5 days? What is the 1 month? What are we looking for? What are we not looking for? After 2 weeks, we were asked to go to a meeting. And in this meeting, we had every doctor that was involved, the lawyers for the hospital, the nurses. They were going to set up a criteria how to care for this or what to do with Lauren. I was scared to death. This ethics committee meeting brought me to my knees almost. I'm like, oh, how far, insurance is a problem, everything was a problem. How far can we carry this? What can we do? I'd already, in my heart, made up a mind to sell my business of 30-some years. Let whatever go. This is pretty important. And I didn't understand what they were doing. They had a meeting, and it was at a table that had 30 people at it and room for 30 more, bigger than anything you got here. And I had asked for one thing. We have a child also involved in this. I need somebody with an authority in infant care. And so they brought a doctor from out of the area in, 2 of them. And we sat there and we listened to the head of this one and that one. These 2 doctors were involved. These 3 nurses were involved. This person was involved. Now, they had my daughter on full life support, and her eyes had not twitched. So we knew it was dire straits. And then we asked about the condition of the baby. Now, this anoxic brain injury occurred from an overdose, which, to give you a simple term as I can, it went under investigation because apparently she was arguing with the boyfriend. She hadn't been doing drugs. Somehow, she was injected with a needle where she couldn't possibly do it. This all went in the police report and wound up having this heart failure and an anoxic brain injury. So there was an investigation for 20 months, too. So we didn't know what to do, and then this guy stands up, and he's the one that's in charge of all infant care, and he's saying, well, the baby's in a world of its own. It's in the womb. This one instance here doesn't affect this doesn't affect that, because she had lack of oxygen for 10 minutes, so it does not mean the baby's down. So he was the only one that made real true sense. And then at the very end of the meeting, the head of the ethics committee, who was the one that had been wanting me to release care, basically unplugged. That was what was mentioned to me. Release care, unplugged. I mean, they used every term, and when it's a loved one that close to you, it just kills you. So I'm telling you from a perspective, if you're a nurse or you're a doctor, they don't want you to give false hope. I understand that. But always remember, behind that nurse's uniform is a real person, behind that doctor, and it's that compassionate person with a little bit of hope, or gives you a little bit of room for your faith and your values, that makes a big, big difference. That's what will help you get through it, because it's really tough. At the end of that meeting, the gentleman, he said, well, I tell you what's really important here. Let's everybody think about one thing. What would Lauren want? It was more quiet